Welcome to War Room Impeachment, Thursday evening, January the 23rd, the year of our Lord 2020, episode 130 of War Room Impeachment, broadcasting live from the historic Breitbart Embassy here on Capitol Hill. Jason Miller joins me in studio, Congressman Matt Gaetz joining us on the line, and Stephen K. Bannon will join us for the second part of the show. Gentlemen, I want to dive right in. Congressman Gaetz, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Do we have Congressman Gaetz on the line? We're going to try
right here.
Oh, there you are.
There he is, the man.
There you are, always on time. Congressman Gaetz, we'll start off with today. I'll give you guys a brief précis of what I saw go down. Jump in with your thoughts for the audience who may not be able to watch all of these hours, droning hours on television all day long. Really, the Democrats today laying out the quote-unquote abuse of power case. But what I noticed is, and we'll get into the specifics of some of the lies, the misrepresentations that Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, and others have perpetuated over the course of the day. But what I've noticed is today wasn't really an abuse of power montage. It was more like how do we exonerate Joe Biden montage. You heard a lot today from people talking about the propriety of Hunter Biden being on the Burisma board, trying to meme the fact that it's a conspiracy theory that the Bidens had done anything wrong. And honestly, I mean, my approach to when people tell fibs about me is don't repeat them lest they become commonplace in the heads of people whose opinions matter. These guys are saying that all these things are fibs about Joe Biden. Congressman, I want to come to you first. Why then are they repeating these things over and over again? Surely they're not using the impeachment process as a campaign tool for the 2020 election.
Well, unquestionably, they believe Joe Biden is going to be their nominee, and today evidenced that fact. I do also think that this is a bit of strategy from the Democrats. They understand that if Joe and Hunter Biden appear to be corrupt, if it even appears to be a reasonable question to investigate why the son of the vice president, the very vice president who's been tasked with managing Ukraine policy for the administration, why his very son is engaged in this relationship that no one can really understand, and that fundamentally Americans believe is worthy of some inquiry or question. And so I think it shows the soft spot that they're trying to shore up. I will say, Raheem, and I'd be interested in your and Jason's thoughts, I do not believe anyone has given a more thorough defense of Joe Biden than Sylvia Garcia gave today. I mean, it was all in on the fact that Joe and Hunter Biden should be able to engage in these relationships, and there's absolutely nothing wrong about them. I've seen Democrats running for president and other key Democrats in Congress equivocate somewhat on that. She chose a different path.
She did indeed, and of course, launching into the defense of the behavior. Then, of course, Congressman raises the specter of the Trump defense team raising all of this themselves and going very far back into the real beginnings of all of this, which, happened under Hillary Clinton's watch at the State Department, under Barack Obama's watch as president, and under Vice President Joe Biden's watch, as he was the guy who was supposed to be leading the quote-unquote anti-corruption measures in Ukraine. They globbed on to this Poroshenko guy who's the president who was supposed to replace the Russia-friendly president in Ukraine. This was and as they keep saying, listen, I was told for a very long time that I was a conspiracy theorist for saying that it was the EU, the IMF, and the US State Department who did all this in the Ukraine in the first place. The Democrats are now up there saying it in defense of Biden. They say, hey, this was long orchestrated policy. This was official policy, the EU, the IMF, and the US State Department policy. Congressman, for years, from 2013 when I started talking about the Ukraine matter, remember I was there in Kiev during the Maidan Revolution. Nigel Farage, my boss at the time, was talking about this in the European Parliament. We were called conspiracy theorists. Turns out they're now saying that we were right all along. This was official policy, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And Raheem, if there is one thing I could ask the defense lawyers to listen to. It is your podcast from last night where you apply the geopolitical framework to these decisions. The reason that information about a change in Ukraine policy, a provocation of Russia being so relevant to all of this is that it shows why this policy disagreement has erupted into an impeachment. It shows that there are people who are at Embassy Kiev, who are around the State Department, who are emotionally committed to a change in policy that Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, kind of the whole influx of the initial Trump administration was not supportive of. And that is why I've long said that all the evidence you hear can be dissected into either hearsay, conjecture, or a fundamental policy disagreement about how to deal with Ukraine. I think if the Democrats made mistakes today, it's that they opened themselves up for the president's lawyers to highlight all of this as a disagreement that people had about geopolitics, but it requires an understanding of those geopolitics, which is what I thought you illuminated on yesterday's episode brilliantly.
So thank you.
Congressman, this is Jason. I want to jump right in here. You're critical today of the White House's presentation so far regarding in comparing it to what the Democrats are doing in their seamless transition between the PowerPoints and the video and the graphs, which, by the way, I did take a little bit of umbrage on about people not being able to use PowerPoints, as I am a little bit of a boomer. I'm a little older than you and Raheem, and maybe I struggle when it comes to PowerPoint. Do people even still use PowerPoint? Even still the thing that people use?
I think it's Google Slides now.
Okay. Anyways, I don't know how to use it. Right. I'm not as bad as Jack Maxey in the War Room, but I'm teetering on it. Congressman, here's what I want to hear from you. Obviously, we don't get the mic, so to speak, for another day here. Realistically, it's probably Saturday. What specifically do you think the White House needs to do when they come out of the gun, right out of the gate, the first 1 or 2 hours when we have everyone's attention, to the extent anyone's paying attention Saturday? What do you want to see?
Even the Democrat witnesses admitted that they observed no crime, that they observed no extortion, that they observed no bribery. I believe that the Democrat witnesses that we've been hearing framed by Schiff and Nadler and the rest of the House managers have to be plucked out, and we have to show that even among their best witnesses, there was serious doubt as to whether or not any of this would rise to some level of concern to justify what is happening right now on the floor of the United States Senate. I think those clips are key. I think actually that Jay Sekulow and Pat Cipollone have an incredibly strong command of the facts, and I think that they were best when they were highlighting the true motive, the true reasons why we are here, this negative reaction to Donald Trump's election. I think they did a really good job framing that. But, I mean, it was noticeable that when the House and the president's lawyers were going back and forth, the House had a full media package. They had slides, they had graphs, they had pullouts from deposition testimony, and I wouldn't want anyone watching to believe that there are not similarly effective and compelling pieces of evidence that we also could have highlighted in a multimedia presentation. Now, I understand, talking to folks that are on the team, that there are going to be, I think, a little more jazzed up element to the defense than we've seen in the initial days. And I'm hopeful that's the case because there are really strong facts on the president's side. And, they just can't be received by the public through the medium of a 1990s 8th grade book report. I mean, they have to be received, I think, in a medium that is compelling and attention-getting. That's why I did say that we could use just a little less Atticus Finch and maybe a little more Miss Universe in the defense of the president.
So let me put you on the spot here with a prediction. When Republicans when the Trump team picks it up on Saturday, do you think that CNN and MSNBC are going to stay glued to every word of the Republicans have to say in the same way they have with CNN's new primetime anchor, Adam Schiff?
I think that they will remain glued to the coverage. I think that the analysis will be a series of eye rolls and gasps and, like the likes of Gloria Borger and Jeffrey Toobin and Chris Hayes saying, like, oh, we've never seen new lows. These people have departed from the truth. There'll be sort of that, that flummoxing of the analyst world. But I think that these guys really do know the facts of this case. I think they know how to present the defense. I'm optimistic they're going to do a good job. Today, I did just hope that we would maybe incorporate some more diverse medium in that presentation, and I think they will.
The operative word of the day, I think, Congressman, should be pizzazz. We want to see some pizzazz up there, to channel my inner boomer.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say it. I was thinking it. I was like, pizzazz. Okay.
Bit of jazz hands. Congressman, the media is obviously trying to drive a wedge between you and the White House and the White House team as a result of some of these comments, blowing wildly out of proportion what can only be perceived as, I think, to any rational and reasonable person, as helpful recommendations from somebody who's been on the team since before day one. Let's not forget that Congressman Gates was the one who stormed the skiff along with his colleagues to show the world, if not the nation, what was going on down there in Adam Schiff's secret deposition. So I don't think there can be any doubting that you're fundamentally on the team, and if not, a leading member of it. But do you think, to that point, do you think that the warnings have been heeded? If we had gone first, perhaps we wouldn't have had the pizzazz. Do you think the warnings, the recommendations, the kind recommendations coming from a good place, I think, have been heeded? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that we're going to see a little bit more of a jazzed up element in the defense. I'm hopeful that's the case, and I think that we've got to continue to reinforce the elements that were successful in our defense of the president in the House. That you have the presidents of two countries saying that there is no crime and no victim. I don't think you can say that enough. When you've got, I guess, 12 million people tuning in, many of them for the first time. Sometimes we think of all that as just like secondhand, but I would be using every opportunity with Zelensky's words, with the foreign minister of Ukraine's words, with all of these folks saying that there was no pressure. I just think that's critical. I think we're going to see the text highlighted of the transcript so that you can see the liberties that the House managers have taken with the actual words spoken. And, the fact that ultimately, at the end of the day, and I thought that the president's defense team did a brilliant job of this in the initial argumentation on motions, the aid was delivered by the Trump administration that was withheld by the Obama administration, and you're talking about impeaching the president for doing that, and it's wild. So I think that those consistent points will continue to build on our work in the House, and I do think they're going to do a great job. I
think that's such an important point, to note, as the president noted on his Twitter feed today as well, that the Obama administration also withheld aid from a great number of countries. Perhaps there wasn't the ostensible link, the purported link to a political adversary in a specific, like a Joe Biden figure, but there was certainly domestic political implications for everything that President Obama did, and certainly therefore electoral implications for what Obama did on the international stage. That happened all around the world, and there were no impeachments, and there were no calls for any impeachments as a result of any of those things. The same very thing with the Government Accountability Office. Obama slapped on the wrist a number of times by the GAO, and nobody back then was holding placards in front of the Supreme Court or in front of the Capitol building saying impeach Obama because the GAO told us to do so. It's like you say, Congressman, it's a manifest nonsense, and this comes back to some of the specifics that we've been mentioning on the War Room Impeachment Live blog at warroom.org over the course of the day. There is a direct link, and I want to come back to this point that we made earlier in the show already about it being official policy. Does it being official policy, gentlemen, mean that it was right or ethical or good or not immoral or not corrupt? Are they saying that official U.S. government policy is always correct? How can that be the case? Congressman.
I think that there is a sense among the people who are part of permanent Washington and the permanent diplomatic corps that they really are the writers and directors of this show we call democracy, and that the people who are elected are merely the actors that get to play out that role. And I think in the president's campaign in 2016, he largely said that was true, that the people running the country that were elected were morons, and that we needed a different class of people to actually drive the decision-making directly, not through permanent Washington or the permanent diplomatic corps exclusively. And so there is a natural reaction and resistance to that we see impairing the president's policy choices in a variety of contexts. Frankly, around the world, there are people that get in the way of the president's instincts and in the way of the policies that I think he would choose because we have this permanent element of the diplomatic corps. and they believe that they're so not used to a transformational president like Donald Trump that their reaction to that is this type of nonsense. I would ask Jason this question though, like as we roll into prime time now and see all of this unfolding, what do you believe will be the salient points that the House managers made that their allies in the media will try to crystallize? Because I think that would be helpful for myself and many of the other the president's allies to have a keen understanding of maybe how someone would view it with your background.
Well, I think what they've gone to, I mean, we've seen a couple of themes that have really started to emerge. If this isn't impeachable, then nothing is. Laying down, they're already starting to lay down the predicate that they're going to lose this impeachment fight, and then whatever the elections of this fall are going to be invalid. And then also the whole 3 days to remember, the July 24, July 25, July 26. And I think with Schiff going continually with the repetition, he's just trying to drive this over and over. It's one of those, as Raheem said this morning, if you say something that's untrue enough times, people start to believe it, ultimately. And I think it's imperative upon us as Trump allies, folks like yourself as key allies of the president himself, that we go out there and continue to beat back each one of these points individually and shove it in their face over and over and over. Because when I hear senators say, oh, there's nothing new, that doesn't do it, because if they're making an accusation and our response is there's nothing new, then we're not fighting back. I think we have to absolutely go dead set right at the credibility of Adam Schiff. And, and even to this point, where they're going a little bit too...
Will they do that, do you think, Jason? I said on War Room Podcast that I believe we have to put Schiff on trial. His involvement in the setup, his embarrassment from the Russia investigation, his repeated misrepresentations, and by the way, I think you gotta have that pretty close to up front. You gotta have the denials of the Democrat witnesses, and then you gotta roll into, I think, the lack of credibility of Schiff, because he does not lack elegance in his oratory skills.
No, he's great. And one of the smartest things that the president did in the run-up to this impeachment trial, during the last couple of months here, is he has made Adam Schiff a partisan figure that's known household by household across the country. He had some name ID, obviously, but he's been out there during the entire Russia hoax attacking the president. But POTUS really put him on notice over these last few months. What I love today from the president is that he got the @RealDonald Trump account fired up today. He was really engaged. He's back from Davos. He's spitting fire. He's calling things out. I want to see him go after Schiff directly, because here's the thing: what are they going to do? Impeach him? He's already getting impeached. Like there's no downside, because
will the lawyers do that though? The president's doing it. Is it your expectation that the lawyers will be that direct about it?
I hope they are. I hope they go right at Adam Schiff, and I hope they, like you said, they turn it around and put Schiff on trial and make this about Schiff's credibility. Because when we get up there, and what I hope is that when the Pat and the team kicks off on Saturday, you could literally spend the entire first hour. Here's where Schiff said something, and then here's where he's directly contradicted by members of his own caucus, witnesses that they called themselves, and testimony that we got that from, and literally just chop block his credibility over and over. Put Adam Schiff on trial, put him on blast.
How would you then work in the points Raheem was making about the geopolitical overlay on these facts that I think are like the yellow brick road for exoneration for the president? That they, while they are striking and compelling, it is complicated, and it is not part of the American political vernacular on a day in, day out basis. And so how much credence would you give it, and then how do you weave it into those other important points?
So that's a great question, because my inclination is that we really have their attention, let's say the first hour. Like, we know that first hour when Pat comes out, and I'm assuming it'll be Pat that leads off as opposed to Jay or one of the other teammates, that hour is really going to set the stage. So I think we have to go through and do a little bit what Schiff did, to say we're going to go at their credibility, we're going to lay out the broader issue of what's really going on here, and we're going to go and tell our own story a story about Democrats who didn't win in 2016, who've been trying to undermine this election for the last several years, how they're trying to set it up for 2020. And what they don't want to tell you is everything that's been going on with Ukraine and the corruption and the Bidens and everything else that's really at the core of this. So it's almost, I think you almost have to do the, hear all the chapters that we're going to do in that first hour to lay it out to keep folks interested. But then right after you get done doing that, then I would go right into Schiff, going after his credibility, and then get in a little more of the deeper dive into, like you said, some of the broader geopolitical things that Raheem laid out.
Congressman, we've got about 30 seconds left with you this half of the show. Just any final words for the largest impeachment-focused audience on the right?
Don't be discouraged. I mean, look, I continue to believe that this is a galvanizing effort for our movement, and I think that it's always difficult when you have to observe, these lies day after day from the Democrats, but I think at the end of the day we're going to have it. I also think that Steve made a great point earlier. He said the president's not going to want to see this without a strong defense, and I think we're going to see one.
Congressman Matt Gaetz, thank you so much for joining us here on War Room Impeachment. Once again, we always value your input here on the show. We are going to be back in a few moments' time with Stephen K. Bannon, the regular host of War Room Impeachment, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. In the meantime, make sure you're signed up at warroom.org. Make sure you remember in the morning to follow the live blog on the site, following all the podcasts, subscribing to the newsletter on the website. And remember, also, we're going to be going through a lot more of the detail on these shows. You're not going to miss a single one. We'll be back in just a moment.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment, Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. I'm Raheem Kassam, joined in studio by Jason Miller, clearing up a few technical difficulties on the line right now, as we try and get Stephen K. Bannon on assignment in New York into the makeshift studio up there, and you can hear the background noise as Steve gets ready. The Senate is on break
Raheem,
right now.
I call it authenticity.
Hey, hang on. Well, this is the War Room. We're not a $1 million operation.
No.
We're a $12 operation.
We're keeping it real.
Look, we have the Senate on break right now, and the reason is they're all tuning in to hear Steve. So everyone's waiting to hear Steve's comments. Before Steve joins us, before we get him in here, I want to get to the tweet from Marsha Blackburn, Senator Marsha Blackburn today. Alexander Vindman, she tweets, broke the chain of command and leaked the contents of the president's July 25th phone call to his pal, the whistleblower, over a policy dispute with the president. How is that not vindictive? I want to break that down for the audience once again, just in case you missed that. Alex Vindman, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, the person we were told is a great patriot, went up there with Adam Schiff's committee, spilled the dirt, apparently, the beans on the whole operation. Senator Marsha Blackburn, big charge. It's a very big charge, saying he broke the chain of command and leaked the contents of the president's July 25th phone call to his pal, the whistleblower. And why that's so important and perhaps incendiary, Jason, is because Vindman testified that he did not know who the whistleblower was. So Marsha Blackburn is effectively accusing Vindman of having committed perjury in the House. Is my understanding of that correct? And what's your interpretation here?
Yeah, and Raheem, correct me if I'm not spot on here, but didn't Vindman also say that he did not coordinate with the whistleblower? That he right? That was what he said. So this is shots fired. I mean, this is the gauntlet being thrown down here. This is what everybody has been talking about. This is what the breadcrumbs, not just breadcrumbs. I mean, it's literally like the fluorescent lights. Like as if you're landing in an airport. This is exactly where this path is going. You cannot miss it. And Senator Blackburn brought the heat on this.
I think we said this. I remember specifically saying it on one show or another. It's probably episode 6 or something back in the day. That I suspected that it was Vindman who leaked to the whistleblower for the complaint that went to the Inspector General, but then went to Adam Schiff's staff, and then there was collusion with Adam Schiff's staff, and Adam Schiff says only his staff, not Adam Schiff himself. I don't buy it, but hey, we'll take each lie as they come. Does this tweet from Marsha Blackburn set up having to put Adam Schiff on the stand, having to hear Adam Schiff as a witness, having to interrogate the so-called whistleblower, maybe even bringing back Alex Vindman in and saying, okay, you want to purge yourself again, buddy, we dare you.
Absolutely, and here's the reason why putting Schiff up there as a witness would be so critical. He has lied repeatedly over and over. And to have him up there and force him to answer for the lies. So you said this, here's where the witness said this, or here's what you said, here's where the direct testimony said the exact opposite. How do you square these up? And just over and over and over, and watch this little pencil neck geek, watch him just completely squirm on this. I think that'll really go out their credibility. But, Raheem, you make a good point in taking this back to the beginning. Where did this start? Mm-hmm. You have Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who was on the call. And then the whistleblower, as everyone might remember, was not on the call. And sometimes it's so obvious, it's right in our face, we forget to say that over and over. This all started because the whistleblower, who we all know who he is, his attorney really likes Disney and Selena Gomez and some other things.
Spicy.
Well, no, I mean, he liked it all on YouTube.
I know. It's still spicy.
Yeah, no, I mean, the one video of Selena Gomez I thought was a little bit bumpy. But this person, it was a foreign policy disagreement, disagreed with where President Trump was going. We saw the report from Paul Sperry over at Real Clear Investigations,
yes,
where apparently the whistleblower had talked about finding ways to take out President Trump going back to 2017.
Real Clear Investigations is not exactly Breitbart.com or warroom.org. It's not a right-wing battleground for the Real Clear Investigations is a centrist, if not center-left kind of website that hosts and Real Clear Politics and all these guys that hosts polling, opinion from across the board, commentary, analysis, and Real Clear Investigations, their investigative arm. They're not. It's not exactly one of these things that CNN can just dismiss like they do to us as, oh, they're fake news, they're far right. This is a serious charge that was made, and nobody seems to have come back and said that's not true.
Right, and think about the explosion this will be, that if we go and definitively prove by putting Lieutenant Colonel Vindman on the stand, by putting the whistleblower on the stand, that they've been perjuring themselves, putting Adam Schiff on the stand, that they've all lied. They've all lied under oath. It blows this entire thing up into a million pieces. I
think that's right, and I hope and pray that given the sort of the openings that we've heard from the House managers today in the Senate trial, that the president's lawyers are busily scribbling down notes, or maybe even had those notes in the first instance to get this all out. I want to go back to, you said where it all began, but the whistleblower isn't where it all began. The whistleblower is when the chickens came home to roost. The chickens had already been out there in Ukraine, the chicken Kiev, if you will. The trajectory that Joe Biden had set the country on when he was named as the Ukraine guy, and the people that he had around him. I highlighted this on my Twitter feed today, and it was on the War Room live blog. There is direct linkage between this company, Blue Star Strategies, which had at its helm former Obama Clinton staffers who had been lobbying for Burisma, had lobbied the Obama administration on Burisma's behalf directly in terms of the corruption element. They weren't looking to do a business deal. They were lobbying to try and get the U.S. government to recognize Burisma as a non-corrupt company. The same people from Blue Star, such as Karen Tramontano, were pictured with the Atlantic Council, with the ambassador of Ukraine to the USA back then. This was Poroshenko's ambassador. They were in the same meetings with George Kent, in the same meetings as Ambassador Bill Taylor. The people that we have seen held up, not just in the House, but are now on the televisions in the Senate trial, they're held up as these non-partisan career bureaucrats who love their country and are just trying to do the right thing. These people were in the meetings with former Obama, Clinton staffers who were trying to do Burisma, their client, a solid, right? The paper trail is clear for everyone to see. I've laid it out on the Twitter feed today, on at Raheem Kassam on Twitter and at War Room 2020 on Twitter as well. And guess who the managing director at Blue Star Strategies is? It's Daniel Erickson, former special advisor for Western Hemisphere affairs to guess who? Vice President Joe Biden.
Interesting.
It comes back to what I just said and what the House managers have been saying all day, that this was official U.S. policy in coordination with the European Union, in coordination with the IMF. Jason, they're saying because it was government policy, that doesn't mean it wasn't corrupt, and that doesn't mean it wasn't. That doesn't mean it was corrupt, and it doesn't mean it was wrong. They are trying to make the case that government policy is never corrupt or never wrong. I think we're going to be joined by Stephen K. Bannon momentarily. That's the audio hum you hear in the background. We'll bring him in as soon as he's situated. Jason, can government policy, does saying it's official government policy get the Bidens and all these people in this circle off the hook?
No, because it was official government policy when Joe Biden, for example, flew over to China. But was it official government policy then when he had a Hunter joining him on Air Force Two and going in to do some of his business? No.
I'm sorry. I mean, if anything, official government policy is usually incorrect and corrupt. If anything, if you want to make the excuse that it was official government policy, then we know it was corrupt, and especially under that administration. Do we have Stephen K. Bannon on the line? Steve, are you with us?
Yes. Can you? Hopefully, you'll be able to see me visually. Also, I don't know, but I'm here in the studio in New York.
We can see your beautiful face, Steve. Thank you for joining us here this evening. Thoughts from today. We had Congressman Gates on at the beginning of the show. He was talking about what he hopes the president's lawyers do and how we can chop up these arguments that we heard today. Many of the arguments from today aimed at exonerating Joe Biden, but we're arguing here right now that actually they've opened a lot of doors for interrogation on this.
Yeah, I agree, and I saw, Matt Gaetz's comments really set fire to a lot of things up here in New York. People really paid attention to him. I agree with Gaetz in the fact that I think we've got to go and start attacking the merits of Schiff's case. I think there's a lot of strength. I think the facts are really, it's unity and substance. I think the facts are on our side, and I think we've got to focus on that.
If you guys are watching or listening at home, you can catch the live stream at americasvoice.news at warroom.org. We have the live video stream up, and Steve is joining us from New York. Jason, let's come back to some of the conversation we had in the first half and get Steve's thoughts on this. The lawyers for the president will have been looking at the legal cases that's been set out by the House managers, the presentations, the slides, all of that. You raised the question, and with Matt Gaetz, will the news networks continue to cover in the same way that they've covered this, which is to say that they put up a slide, and the reaction from the panels at CNN is, "Oh my goodness, look at the evidence. This is overwhelming." And what do we expect on Saturday? And what should Trump's lawyers be doing on Saturday to fight back against the narratives that are being set today?
Well, I think part of it, we really have that first hour, I think, to really capture people's attention. And what we want them to realize is they have a lot that's going to be coming their direction, that there's a lot of good stuff. So it needs to start with a bit of an overview. Same way that Adam Schiff came out, and rather than just, hey, here's our brief introduction, he basically started laying out the case. I think we have really that first hour to say we have a lot of good stuff that's going to be coming, give them, essentially here are the chapter titles that are going to be coming at them. And then right away, first thing coming out of the gate, I would just start going at the credibility of the partisan hacks who put this together, as well as the administrative state people who did it, and say this is where. But it has to be a story overall. I think we're going to need a lot of good visuals to keep people's attention. And in particular, Steve always calls me one of the most cynical people that he knows. I think the media, the CNNs and MSNBCs, are going to cut away a lot and say,
agree.
"Oh, let's go and have a panel with Anna Cabrera and Jim Sciutto, and we'll come back if we think that there's something at all interesting that we want to get to." And meanwhile, like you said, there'll be the eye rolling and all those sorts of things. I think we got to make it visually stimulating, tell a story, and really get to the heart of this. That this isn't the July 24, 25, 26. Ukraine's one of the most corrupt countries in the entire world. This started with the nullification project of Donald J. Trump. It's all about trying to frame things for 2020, tell a full story with lots of good visuals.
Steve, where would you start on this? Would you start at it was a perfect call and go through the transcript? Would you start with Joe and Hunter Biden?
I start with what you said the other day, the geopolitical framework, what America First is, unity and substance. I think one of the things I haven't liked, and I haven't been dialed in as much today because I've been getting some updates on China, which I'll give you guys an update on the potential pandemic. But what I don't like is that people are just turning this into a process argument. Once again, how President Trump shifted the entire House of Representatives to his time and finished so strong was to go to the theory of the case, right? Which the left always, the New York Times always lays out when they talk about the stories, the theory of the case. I would start with what you discussed yesterday about the geopolitical realities and about America First national security policy. I would go all in on that and then go through and lead up to the perfect call and everything around it. To me, President Trump didn't do anything wrong here. It's what he was hired to do. But I think we got to get as granular as, and I think that's what Gates was trying to tell him. Hey, they're running a sophisticated TV program, right? With video and charts and graphs and PowerPoints. We have to be just as sophisticated. We have to come back on that, and because I think the merits of the case, Reince texted us last night when you and I were on to say, finally, you got to get into the merits of the case. Leave the process. I don't really care right now if it's impeachable or not. I don't care about all the theoretical conversations on the Constitution. I want to go into the heart of the matter, and I think that's what Gates is saying. Once you go in the heart of the matter, the American people are going to understand some of this separation of the powers and executive privilege. It's a little esoteric because you can win on the facts of the case, and I think that that's where we have to go and have to go in hard.
Yeah, Steve. As regards the policy dispute and all of the policy conversations that will take place here as a result of this, and that I hope take place when Trump's team go up. Do you go back and pull out all of this stuff we talked about in the in the bottom of the hour here? We talked about all of the Biden-Obama staffers that were around. Do you pull all of that out? Do you use all the time that they have? Because Jay Sekulo's been up there and he said, look, we'll use as much time as we need to use. We don't necessarily need to use all of it. If it were me, honestly, I would use every single second possible and just wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat.
It would take, for me to go through the details, I think if the three of us did this, it would take us 24 hours. 24 hours would be too short.
Yeah.
The American people ought to know. Now, the question is, how much of that can they actually get in and address, since I'm not sure what the rules of evidence are that is for this, what the rules of evidence call for this. But I would go through soup to nuts and get down to the granularity. And I would take my time. I would not rush through this. I'd have more videos, more PowerPoints. I would have the charts. I'd have the graphs. I'd have it all as a tutorial, not for the Senate, a tutorial for the American people, a tutorial for the voters to understand thoroughly, directionally, what President Trump was trying to accomplish, and then what he actually did accomplish.
And show,
right?
and
all the way to the point of going back into the beginning of the Ukraine situation, but particularly the Obama administration and how they, I'm so tired of hearing this whining about how dramatic shift does it about, this ally that we left hanging out there and this strategic partner that we left that has a war that's killed 15,000 people, and yet we left him hanging out there. It was President Trump that sent the anti-tank missiles. It's President Trump that set all the ground radar. It's President Trump that set the military hardware to allow them to combat the Russians. It was President Obama that sent the hand warmers in the extra pair of socks. It's that level of granularity. I want to take an entire hour, right, on the first day to describe what shape the Ukraine was in when President Trump got involved with this, what he was left with and what he's turned around and what the results of his policies are today. I think you take everything that Schiff and these guys put out there and you contest every fact.
And another lie that has been sort of memed into existence is that President Trump only released the aid and this stuff only happened when he got caught, right? But they neglect to mention that actually this happened in 2017 was when they really started to ramp up the support for Ukraine. In 2018, the Javelin missiles were first actually tested there in early 2018. So this was a second round of new policy towards helping the Ukrainians as a strategic partner that the Obama administration never did, Jason.
Yeah, and Steve, I think what I described as the opening 1 hour narrative, the 1 hour version where we kind of lay out here the chapters, the geopolitical implications, the partisan motivations to this, and really importantly, going right at the credibility of Schiff, Vindman, the whistleblower, and the rest of these characters, Jerry Nadler, through his whole cover-up effort that has somehow swung Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski strongly back into the GOP fold. So thank you, Congressman Nadler, for your efforts on this front over the past 24 hours. But I think it's important to take that 1 hour narrative setting and tell that a couple times each day, because we don't know when exactly people are going to tune in. Keep in mind, reporters cover part of a day, then they rotate out, new reporters come in. We essentially, for each new news cycles, like the morning news, the midday news, then the evening, we need to do kind of tell that story over again. So look, I would do it upwards of 2-3 times a day for each of the 3 days, telling that overall story, and it's the repetition.
Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. That's the core of political narrative. The last thing, because I know we may be running out of time, but guys, Jason, as I sit there, I kind of looked at this in the last couple of days through your eyes. They are sitting there thinking of the 30-second spots that they're going to pull from Schiff's dramatic presentation with the videos. I'm thinking of what is going to be the counter 30-second spot to take what he said and to have Pat Cipollone and Jay Sekulow basically calling a lie from the well of the Senate. That's the 30-second. What they need to do is give us the 30-second spots or the cut-ins that we can take and destroy their 30-second spots, because trust me, Bloomberg is going to put an unlimited amount of capital on pulling spots from what they've had of free shots on goal, right?
And Steve, to that point, it's important. So like a Pat Cipollone or Jay Sekulow or our folks driving the strong message, but equally as effective in just the ad making type context. And when you get Schiff versus Schiff, or you get Schiff versus a Democratic witness, where you can go and make them look completely idiotic, like the Biden video of him saying, "We're going to get this son of a bitch." That contrasted against something Adam Schiff is saying, that can be just as powerful, if not more effective, than a person driving a positive message from the well. I think it's got to be just pure fire.
What they have shown and how they're running this is they understand deeply into the marrow of their bones. They have no candidate that can defeat Donald Trump. They have to go to this. That's what they're trying to do. That's the narrative. That's where the spots are going to come from. And this is the preamble to the 2020 campaign. It's right here. This preamble needs to be crushed on its narrative basis 100% before we finish this. And that's why we've been an advocate for a long trial. If we're not going to get the witnesses for the long trial, it's up to Cipollone, Sekulow, and this great team to take the torch to the enemy.
Look, we've had nearly 150 hours on war and impeachment now, and we barely scratched the surface of why the swamp needs to be drained as it pertains to this whole Ukraine thing. So I don't want to hear that we don't need to use the full 24 hours in the Senate. Quite frankly, we do. Steve, in our last 30 seconds, I just want to read you the Senator Marsha Blackburn tweet. She said, Alexander Vindman broke the chain of command and leaked the contents of the president's phone call to his pal, the whistleblower, over a policy dispute with the president. How is that not vindictive? She is effectively accusing Vindman, who Schiff's had on the TVs there all day, of having committed perjury when he said he didn't know who the whistleblower was and he didn't work with the whistleblower. That's a pretty big called shot from Senator Blackburn, right?
That's the great, hey, unity in substance. Unity in substance. Unity through substance.
It's pretty good. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time out up there in New York. I know you've been doing a lot on the China issue as well today. Thank you so much for joining us for this special evening episode of War and Impeachment, episode 130, Thursday, 23rd of January, 2020. Jason, any final thoughts?
No, just once again, thank you to Jerry Nadler for all of his efforts over the last 24 hours. I'm keeping tabs on Mayor Giuliani. His story in the New York Post, or he tweeted in the New York Post, was one of the first, saying that he's getting very close to putting out the information regarding Joe Biden and how the Bidens have gotten rich. Those are two stories I'm going to be paying close attention to until we come back tomorrow morning.
There is so much going on right now. The Senate's about to go back in after dinner. We're going to be keeping a keen eye on it. Make sure you're checking out warroom.org. The live blog there is on fire. Make sure you're signed up to the podcast. Leave us a review. Subscribe to the newsletter, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., another episode of War Room Impeachment.